Okay, so I am back again. Round 2. Again, no idea how long this is going to last for. Let me just do some mic checks. Hello? Test, test, test. Need to lower the volume of the music, background music, because it was super loud last time. You could barely hear what I was saying. Alright, I'm going to assume that is fine. Always lower it down if needed. So this video is going to be, or this stream I should say, is mostly going to be just me making a mission from scratch using some of the components that I talked about last time. So if you've not seen part 1, it's 3 hours long, so I wouldn't blame you, but there's chapter titles and stuff like that, so you can flick through it, see what's useful to you, but I'm not going to recap any of the stuff that I talked about in that because, well, I've already done it. So aspects of the video will come up, so stuff like flight recordings, spawn stuff, but I'm not going to be remaking the whole Harvard stuff from scratch. I'm mainly going to focus on creating the initial staging area and going into the first objective. I've already got a rough idea about what I want to happen in this mission, because I spent about an hour last night speaking with the other collab that I'm going to be working on this campaign with. So he's going to be working on 4 missions, I'll be working on 3 or 4 missions for an upcoming series in September. So we're just in June now, so there's plenty of time to do this. I probably won't stream every single time I mission make, because I feel like that would be counterproductive for me. But you know, when I intend on doing large portions of a mission, I can definitely stream that. But a lot of the time I just kind of like, I do a big portion, get that out of the way, and then let me just find out where it is Lepera, there we go. So I usually do a big portion of the mission making like in the first few days, and then I just kind of like add to it whenever I think something needs updating. So with voice lines and stuff, I usually leave that until the last month or so. So I might do like a couple to start with, but the general concept of this mission is that we've been fighting insurrectionists for quite a while, but now the Covenant are starting to invading. We were in a flight, a formation flight of Pelicans, and our Pelicans have been shot down. So the Covenant are invading the islands, we've been shot down, and now we need to regroup and go from there. So I did kind of like do a little bit of this yesterday, but I think I'll just start from scratch because I didn't really make a whole lot of progress. I just did like the Pelican crash sites, but yeah, I'll just start from this mission because actually I haven't really done a whole lot now that I've seen. So we've crashed over here and over here, so that'll be 1-1 and 1-2. We're either going to have radios or not have radios. It's going to be like really early morning, so it's going to be a really cool vibe. So it'll be kind of like this ambience. So in the tree lines and stuff, it'll be dark, but not too dark. But for the purposes of mission making, I usually just do it in broad daylight, so it's a little easier for me to see. Right, so those are going to be our respawn points. There will be like a cinematic introduction, but I don't think I'll work on that right now. It'll just be like creating the POIs, creating the objectives, and doing detail work, so you can kind of see my process for that. But going back to the aesthetics, I like using these type of villages and these type of towns because it, maybe not so much these ones, but these ones, they do kind of like give that Halo Mombasa housing styles a little better than some of the other ones that I've seen, like the European houses. So like if I spawn in which one is it? Yeah, one of these. It kind of blends in a little bit better. There's some similarities, but I mean I can mix and match. I'll make a bunch of these destroyed anyway in the mission, because what you've got is in the Zeus module, a module that allows you to just click on a building and destroy it, or destroy it to a certain length, so either 25%, 50%, and it changes the damage of the building to reflect that. So a lot of these buildings are going to be damaged in the missions. I'll just do that on the fly in the mission though. So we crash over here and over here. We do our regrouping. There's not going to be any radios, so we've got to look for visual, you know, some sort of visual indication of where we're going to be grouping up. So what I've done is I've just had, because it's going to be nighttime, right? We'll have voice lines and stuff like that saying like longsword going down, and then it will kind of like build up that tension, that atmosphere. So we'll start over here. We need to go in this general direction, and I mean there's only going to be one light source in the area, so it's my hope that just naturally people will be guided towards that light source, and then they'll kind of regroup in here, especially if there's audio cues to kind of like give that as well. Maybe there'll be some ambient gunfire in this area, so the closer these guys get to it, the more it kind of like pushes them into that direction. But I mean, problem with leaving things out into the open like that is people could just ignore it. They could just like go over this way, because the whole idea is that we've been shot down, and the Covenant are hunting us at the moment. So we're trying to remain stealthy. So going towards active gunfire may not be the best call, but in terms of gameplay, I think that's the direction that people will go towards. So. But yeah, so there might be big long periods of where I just kind of like don't talk, because I'm kind of focusing. There's not really much to say. It's mainly going to be detail work, so I'm just going to get started. But I'll give little comments and stuff as we go through. So first, what I'm going to do is, because those are the two crash sites and that's the rally point. Now we need to proceed from the rally point. And one of the ideas that came up with is just like in the Halo Reach mission, where Noble team meets up with the like insurgents, and they kind of like defend the area from the Covenant, and they have those voice lines where it's like, where'd you get these weapons from? You know, it's illegal. And we're gonna have kind of like the same sort of like experience here, but I'm just deforming using the deformer tool to kind of like change the terrain based on what I want. Deformer's really good. It allows you to get those kind of like slight changes, slight map alterations to the terrain, because working around Armored Priest terrain and stuff like that, it can be a little tricky some. You know, sometimes you want there to be like a hill or something in the way, so Deformer's really cool. It allows you to change the terrain based on those little inputs and stuff. So this isn't going to be perfect. I'm just getting a rough kind of like playing ground, because I want this to kind of like be the main defensive portion, just like in the game. So I'm going to use a bunch of reference images. So what mission was it actually? Was it called Nightfall? I think the mission was called Nightfall. Yeah, so this is kind of like the environment that I'm going to mimic. But I just need to find the playable area, so I can have a better visual representation. I mean, I usually use like references, but then I kind of build off the terrain myself. But having kind of like this these references to work with just quite help. So I'm going to put that onto my second screen, so you won't actually see that, but I will. So so a lot of the dirt road coming in here. We'll have the farmhouses. Some of them can be on kind of like an elevated ground. So like if I raise the terrain up here and make that a little flatter. I'll have to do some grass cutting with that. So there's a prop that you can use, grass cutter. So for me, like as an infantry, from the air, from the sky, that looks great, right? Like nice flooded, kind of like overgrown area. But when you get too close, the grass kind of like obscures that. So what I can do is I can use a grass cutter prop. So for me, like as an infantry, from the air, from the sky, that looks great, right? Like nice flooded, kind of like overgrown area. But when you get too close, the grass kind of like obscures that. So what I can do is I can use a grass cutter prop. So and then that removes it, so it's actually a puddle rather than overgrown grass. So I'll do a bunch of that later when I'm doing like minimalist detail work. So I want it so that when we come out of the bushes here, we can see the farmhouse in the distance. So ideally there'll be like a fence line here maybe. And you know, this is touch and go, so I'll edit this further as needed. I'm just trying to like build the terrain around what I think would be an interesting area to fight in, because like having these big open areas isn't great, because you just a whole bunch of running. So there's got to be some. Whenever I'm doing mission making, it's like I don't want people to just run from point A to B without there being anything interesting to see on the way there. There's got to be some visual. Something visual there, whether it be like crash sites or like some farmsteads, or I wouldn't want just someone to run through an open jungle for like half an hour. It's not particularly engaging gameplay for me, and I don't think other people mind, but you know, when I'm building up these worlds and stuff like that, that's what I try and go for. So some light detail work with this rather than being like classic armor buildings, just to kind of like give that Halo vibe off. I'll just place one of these down, just a simple farmstead. So you can also add in some like little windmills and stuff like that in the center. So that when you come out of these trees, you know, rather than it being an armor-free terrain, you know, it kind of helps blend those two worlds together. I mean, you can still have shacks. It's not like these shacks would be non-existent in a Halo universe. I'm sure they would exist, but you can kind of mix between, you know, the various terrains and stuff like that, and figure out what you want to work best. So I'll just do this a few times. When I use the hide terrain objects, what I usually do is I make sure that they operate locally. So one issue that you can have with hide terrains is that the terrain module won't actually hide on a person per person basis. So some people will see the terrain hidden, some people won't. So if you make it operate locally, it really helps make that a little bit more consistent. Unfortunately, one of the issues with Deformer is that it oftentimes doesn't has the same syncing issues. I don't really know a workaround for that. So what I usually do is I just use it sparingly, rather than having these like massive, what's it called? Deformer edits and changes, rather just small terrain changes, so that if it is not syncing correctly, then there's minimal damage, because all you've done is just raised up the terrain a little bit. So you know, it might look a little jank, but it will look less jank than having an entire terrain edited. So none of this stuff is final. I usually like change the terrain a lot, depending on what I want to happen. So but initially just having some farmsteads and stuff like that. I could even have like a second objective here, or a second POI, point of interest. Because again, I don't really like big open spaces like this, especially if there's going to be like a stealthy portion, because it forces people to go through these trees. So maybe here. Or here. So these guys are going to have a much shorter walking time to get to there, so... Maybe I'll have some like grunts and stuff like this sleeping. There's a Web Knight's added a really cool addition to his Web Knight's Uptree expansion in that you can right click on a grunt and make him sleep in your Zeus. So maybe I could have a bunch of like sleeping grunts around here. Ideally these farmsteads are going to be like abandoned, so I need to do some more decoration in that regard to kind of give that impression. Same thing with over here. The idea is not to put people in combat immediately. We're gonna have like this nice stealth sequence before we get into the main combat, and then just like constantly combat from there. So that doesn't work quite how I wanted it to. I'm looking for these ones. Here we are, the city terraces. I'm going to have to put quite a few of these down, but that's fine. What I do is I just make a big platform first. And then I can always lower it down a little later, rather than doing them individually. Let me switch out this track. I'm not vibing with this fucking eerie music. There we go. So I'm just trying to think of how I can do this, because obviously you're limited by your game props and stuff like that, so I won't be able to do it exactly one-to-one how it was in the games, but I can get pretty close. And it doesn't matter if it's not flush right away, because I can always edit it later. That goes with the train as well. these. I think these have different... Yeah, they do have different... I want to use these ones first. So let me delete those two. VR would probably be a better place to make this, but it is what it is. At least when I'm in the game like this, I can build it conforming around terrain. But VR would make things a lot quicker if it was flat, basically. Now, I could probably just use a 50 by 50 piece for this. That might things make it a little easier. Camp 50 by 50 works quite nice. But I don't know if that's the texture that I want, really. So that might be better. That would kind of give it like a nice contrast as well to the to this. So I'll go with that. I can always add these back later. So the reason it's flickering like that is basically because it's in the ground. The game doesn't know which texture to prioritize. Easy way you can just avoid that happening is just to raise it up a little bit. So it may not be exactly flush with the ground, but it avoids that flickering. I see so many times when you've got like custom compositions and stuff, people place walls and stuff in between each other, like exactly. But so I'm just looking from a distance how this is looking at the moment, because I just experiment, see how things go. I can always make changes later on. That's fine, because what I'm using as a reference pick is kind of like the night format from Reach. So that's kind of like the vibe that I'm going for. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly one-to-one. Nothing can be, but I could probably do with making it a little smaller, perhaps. But also, I'm just trying to cover up the amount of terrain, because obviously it doesn't scale as well, because you got to have 30 people. So having a few more buildings and stuff is going to make things quite nice. So So if I double the area for now, this isn't going to look like this for much longer. Put that over there floating to the side for a second. I don't necessarily want it to be too samey as well, so I'll deviate a little bit from... Rather than it being a pure hexagon, I can like extend this out a little bit or make it go in. To kind of vary that out. So the deformer tool is really cool, as I mentioned earlier, because it allows you to change the terrain how you want it. So at the moment I'm just using Control and 4, and I've height limited it to... I've clicked on a point of the map basically where I want the terrain to be level to. I'm just going around the outer perimeter to raise that up and make it a little more flat. So now I need to raise this up just a little bit so that it gets flush with the terrain here. And I'm just going to go along the perimeter of it and raise that up. And then I'll tidy up the edges in a moment. There we go. So you can see how already the terrain is taking shape. Before it was really high, so I've just lowered it down a little bit. And obviously, what I'll do is I'll later on just raise the rest of the ground up and just flatten it out a little bit. Kind of give that a little bit of a defilade for people to take cover in from if they need to, but I'm not expecting to use this area for combat, at least initially it's going to be like a defensive area. There's going to be a lot of defensive portions in this mission, so having just a gradual incline up to that point will be fine. Constantly save your work, by the way. Control S, just get into the habit of doing that. You'll thank yourself later. Right, so I want this to be our playable area. I'm going to corner that off. What are these called? City Terrace. Let's grab a corner. My main concern at the moment is just getting these outer perimeter walls set up, so I'm not worried about the terrain. As long as I can see where the walls align, that's the main thing. I can go back into Deformer and tidy this up all day long. Probably turn a couple of these into more stairs, just for multiple access points, make things easier for people. So, you know, I could have just had like a big copy-pasted square, but some deviations to the terrain kind of breaks up the monotony of that, so gives the environment a bit more uniqueness. And then I can obviously take my time filling out this in later, so, you know, it could have just been like one big square here, but you can see how it's, you know, there's some sections there's curves, there's some sections there's corners and stuff, so, you know, I can set some buildings up and some farmsteads and stuff. So that's kind of like my general layout. I'll probably do another one of these layers, so an outer layer and then an inner layer, so to raise it up a little bit more, maybe. The thing is that I don't want that to be too much of a skyline. I think just having a raised bit of land and then some buildings already gives that a pretty good aspect, so. I still don't know wherever I'll go with these terraces. I've used them before, but I don't know how they really look in the context of this mission. Make massive projects, including these, and they look really great within a city environment with all the other Optre props. But as an independent asset with all the others, maybe not so much. But we'll see. There's plenty of time to play around with stuff. I definitely want there to be a ramp up, so. Probably like over here. In the meantime, I'll just continue copy pasting these. And I'll work on making those flush a little later. So maybe I could have like a point here where it just like extends outwards a little bit. So there's a ramp going up rather than all these stairs, because obviously you'd want vehicle access, right? So that could do with being a corner, an inverted corner, actually. It's crazy the amount of time that you can put into a mission, and then this section can get used for like 10 minutes, but you spend like 3 hours building it. But I enjoy making custom compositions and stuff, giving that area a level of uniqueness, so. Try to make these flush as best I can. it doesn't matter too much if there's like these little bits of sticky uppiness. Ideally, you can try and make it as flush as possible, though. As long as it's not too egregious, most people don't even notice. So it's going to be a little bit of clipping here. That's fine. So to open up that screen with the arrows just makes it easier to kind of like more precisely move stuff around rather than using your mouse. Because it often glitches out, so you can open it up with spacebar, by the way, if you didn't know. Right, let me level this out a little better now. Increase the hardness. There we go. So all this area will be fenced off later on. I'll just have to play around with the terrain a bit more, figure out what how I want it to look exactly. Alright, that was very short, but I'm afraid I have to actually go now, so I will leave it here. 40 minutes, not great. I wanted to go for a few hours, so, but it is what it is.